Hey guys, I'm back, and I've got what I think is an exciting unit for you. You know, so far we've been building and building on our skill base designing mechs, right? We've understood hinging and joints and all that kind of stuff. We're understanding how to add references. And I know you're thinking, well, when do I get to build a mech? Well, truthfully, you are. You're doing it right now. I'm just kind of adding all these blocks for you so that by the time you actually sit down and you're like, okay, I'm gonna sketch this out, which we'll get to in a couple units here. You're just gonna be like, bam, yeah, I've got that. And you know what? Bam, I'm gonna throw that in there too. I'm basically feeding you a massive buffet of resources right now, so that when you do start to sit down here and start to sketch it out, you're gonna be like, yeah, I already got this. I already know what I'm doing, right? And so this unit is another continuation of that. This time, for references, we're going to talk about modern machines that we use, right? And how we can, just like we have with other references, take a piece here, take a piece there, kind of piece it together and say, damn, that's cool. I'm going to use that right there. Yeah. So let's jump in. Okay, guys, first up, well, what is it? It's a tank. And tanks are cool for a bunch of reasons, right? But I think even more than you expect. One thing that I want to talk about is like we're getting it into details of machines and stuff like that. So these rivets and that type of stuff that we're going to talk about later. But what I like is this guarding, this angled guarding over this. And I know that's kind of a weird thing for me to first point out on a tank, but imagine you've got like these platform guards and stuff over top of a shoulder or something like that, right? Over top of an arm that's coming, right? Don't be afraid to grab little pieces of a design and make it your own, right? Another thing that I'm going to point out here is the tread. You know, normally when we draw a tread, we draw it like this, right? And then we wrap the tread around, and that's how I drew it ever since, grade 2 or whatever, right? I don't know when I was drawing treads. But look at the actual application of this design here, right? Sure, let's draw this again as a base, but then we've got one that comes up, right? What is that? Why does it come up here? Well, so when it's climbing any ridges or anything like that, it's got that extra grip, and it's got this profile to allow for that, right? And not only that, but behind it are backup wheels that help in this. So when we're designing our tread for our mechs, don't be afraid to like throw a little bit of funk in there, right? Have extra wheels in there. Have things that maybe even wrap around higher. Like what if I want to climb vertical challenges, right? What if I want to boom and bring myself up, right? So you can start to have this, and we can combine it with something like the millipede from a previous unit or something like that, right? There's a lot of cool things you can do here. So like I said, when I'm looking at the tank, I'm grabbing design features and saying, okay, why is this? Some covering over top of exposed areas with paneling and stuff like that, right? I want to have that on my mech. I want to have that protective covering. Tanks, well, they're a tank. They're designed to be armored and fortified and stuff, right? So I think that's pretty awesome. The other thing we're looking at is when we're talking about the top piece of the tank, the barrel, the muzzle, all that kind of stuff, right? The typical way to draw that would be, here's a box, here's the cannon, maybe the dude comes out of here. And that's how, we drew it for a long time. But looking at this reference, there's a lot more to it. So even if I want to draw it like this, right? Well, there's a bit of, it's not just a square. There's a bit of shape dynamics to it. There's sometimes a beveling going on here, or an angling. And why is that? So when opposite tanks shoot at it, right, it's not just hitting on one side and destroying it. It might angle off, depending on, like, it gives more chance for that shell to hit it and kind of angle off, right? So you've got that. You've got a gun turret up top that you can use, right? And you could reference and everything, right? You've got a number of coverings that they could come out of. You've got an antenna coming off the back. And then when it comes to the actual barrel that comes out, you've got a tapering effect with a bevel to it. It tapers as it comes forward. It gets smaller, smaller, until finally it comes here. And then what happens here? It gets wider. I believe part of this is for the shell, the amount of force that's coming off the shell. So it comes out, the explosive power comes out this way, and the actual projectile ends up coming out, right? So you can take that design feature and bring it into your mech. That when something's shooting, it needs some room for the blow off exhaust and stuff, right? Tanks are freaking cool. I want you to Google a dozen of them and see, like, grab a whole bunch of different designs. I'm just throwing one in here for you, but I really think that it's worth looking into, right? I think it's worth grabbing even more, saying, well, what can I do with this tank? Why does it look this way? Not just tanks, but different type of armored vehicles in general, right? How the front of them slope and stuff. I drive a Jeep, so the front profile and how it hits not just curves, but any rise, the angle is really important, right? So that you don't just bottom out on your front end. So that's what we're dealing with here, right? Okay, so we got tanks. Now we're moving into construction equipment. What I think is cool in this, one, I like the exhaust. So it's not just like a pipe and smoke coming out of it. It's this cool angled vent, right? And so you can have that in a housing, and like, then look at these two, like, just side by side, right? They're the same, they're doing the same thing, but they're just a little different, right? And one looks cooler. Okay, the other thing we could talk about, not just like, we've got a hinge. We've already been talking about hinge joints and stuff like that, right? We've got this simple hinge for a lever of like lowering it and raising it or whatever. But look at these hydraulic supports, these hydraulic pistons, right? That come up and lead to another hinge here. Actually, there's a small, slightly movable hinge. It probably only moves so much, but this allows for this slide shaft to go in and out of this hydraulic thing, right? So to do that, what do we draw? We could draw the base of it, right? We could draw the shaft that comes out, and then whatever it is supporting, in this case, a bit of a part of a hinge joint there, a minor moving hinge joint, right? And so how cool is that, right? Like, you can just grab something off this big boy here and use it. Another cool thing that I like on here is the laddering, right? Actually, it comes down and comes down, right? So you can grab a design like this or the handrail. Too many times when we're drawing a mech, we forget that people got to get in and out of it, right? So why not throw a ladder in there? And it's small things like this that make a design so much more believable. So if you've got a cockpit with a driver, figure out how that driver is going to get in and out of it. This, even though it's not a mech, gives us a solution. Ladders, and not just ladders, but hand railing, right? So if they have to walk on a bit of a platform here, give something for them to either handles or hand railings or something like that. Give something for them to grab onto. Again, just like the other units we've covered about references and stuff like that, I don't expect you to draw a mech looking exactly like this. You can if you want, and it transforms, and we've got a line of toys that do that, right? And that's cool, right? What I want you to do is say, what are the key features? Is it the bucket? Is that a key feature? And it might very well be, right? That might be why you're looking at this design. But I'm looking at all of the little details, these supporting things on this, and thinking, shoot, how cool is that? Even look at this axle. Instead of a straight out axle, the middle is thicker and fortified. It's extra supported, right? And you can throw that into one of your designs. Okay. Next up is this ATV, a personal one-man carrier. It's cool. It looks fun, actually. I'd love to go off-roading in this thing. There's a couple things that I think are interesting, some features that I would look at when I'm talking about it. Features that, like I said, when I'm designing a mech that I might forget about. Visibility. In this case, it's a mirror system to look behind us, right? when somebody is in your mech, and again, if this is a driver, or even if it's not, if it's just a bot itself, how does it achieve visibility? Does it have eyes? Does it look around? Does it have a pivot in its head? Or does the driver, is he in a cockpit? Can she look behind her? If not, you know, throw some mirrors in. There's a great idea, right? I like this guardrail. I would love to, we could have a bot, right? I'm just drawing a chest plate here with this cool ass, sorry, I said ass, railing system coming out. Do you know what I mean? And so that when it hits anything, it gives this sign of protection, right? That it just has an extra little bit of protection to it or something like that, right? And so inside might be something you want protected or whatever. In this case, it's the radiator grill and everything like that. So you can have like a grill system inside or something like that that needs some protecting, right? So yeah, this bumper slash guard system I would add in for sure. Look at this, even just a tow winch or a hook, right? How cool is that? That if you incorporate this into like there's a hook with a cable system or whatever on each corner of this. Well, maybe that's how it gets taken care of in the shop, right? It's got this little hook system or whatever, and that's how your mech gets lifted up, right? There's just so many ideas when we're looking at modern machines. You could pick it apart. You could pick apart, the tread or something like that. I've actually got some with a better tread here. The shock system with the coil wrap, right? So we've got our hydraulic sliding joint, but then we've got an extra coil of shock absorbent around it, right? So you could draw something like that. And I think cool ideas, even just this damn seat. It's not just how many times do I want to sit down and I draw my little seat like this, and okay, the dude's sitting in this little chair or whatever, right? And how simple is that, right? But what if I start to change it around? And instead of just that, it's now comes this way, right? And then there's a little bit of a room for a leg, and it's a bevel in here, and then it comes into some support, right? And comes back into here. And then, there's just so many possibilities that when we're looking at modern designs, right? Engineers have designed this stuff for us already, right? There's a saying, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. It's already been done. So benchmark it. Look at it and say, damn, somebody spent a lot of money and effort into designing that. I'm going to grab it, right? Grab it. This is the one I wanted to talk to you about, treads. Like, look at okay, so I could draw a normal wheel, right? But look at the depth. So I could do the treads like this, but they're angled down too, right? And they cut in. Like, how freaking cool is that? So you'd be seeing it from the side here, and there's like this bevel through it, right? There's this, it's slightly faded off of this side. So it comes up. But then you've got this angled part that goes down into the groove, right? Like, honestly, these are the coolest tires around. I would definitely be using something like this if I wanted an intimidating machine that could just roll through anything. In this case, it happens to be a machine that can roll through cornfields. I bet those corn are really intimidated here, right? But anyways, I'm messing with it. These tires. This is what actually I picked this tractor because of these tires. I think they're cool. I have no idea what this front end does. I'm trying to imagine what it does. Like, here, let's zoom in a little bit. I legit don't know. I can't figure it out. Maybe there's something that goes in the side here. I don't know. This is obviously the air intake here. This is maybe used for other things are attached to it or something, right? That could be. Sorry guys, I'm disappointing right now. Anything else? Obviously, we've got the covers, protective covers over vital things. So if debris or whatever is falling, it protects the tires and stuff like that, right? Um, this is only a half one, and why is that? Well, maybe it needs to climb, and so it can't have this interfering. It can't be hanging out here, right? This designer said, okay, well, there's only a need for half. In this case, I don't think this tractor's climbing, actually. What is actually happening is likely there's a big chunk of equipment that usually sits on the front end of this, and that's why it's gone, maybe. I don't know. I'm guessing. I'm not a farmer, and I'm kind of revealing my ignorance here, so I'm just going to move on. Jets. The aerodynamic sweep is pretty damn cool here. Look at how it just flows over everything. Like, this is a nice, and what you could do is, as you're designing, do this kind of topography line over your whatever your design is, so that when you're laying down panels and stuff, they follow that as well, right? Instead of a panel just being blocky and looking out of sorts, you want it so that it really flows with the direction of the bevel or whatever it is, right? Air intake, that's a cool air intake that comes out this way, right? So yes, it can go inside or whatever, right? But just something that juts out of the machine, right? And then it kind of comes in or whatever. But all that air is flushing in, right? I think, for me, that's one of my takeaways on this jet, is this air intake. I think this is pretty cool. The other thing cool is the cockpit. Interesting on this, though, they don't have a way in and out of that cockpit. And you don't always. Why is that? Because this machine is sleek, right? So what they do is they roll up a little ladder system, and the dude or dudette jumps in and out, right? If your machine, your mech, is very sleek, then you don't want to have that hanging ladder that's sitting off here looking all awkward in flight or something like that. That's not going to work. That's not the purpose of this design, right? But look at that. That cockpit is cool. So I would, you could, usually you do a cockpit something like this or whatever, and then it comes around, right? And again, you got those circumference wraps, right? But you can mess with that front end. You can have a little divot here or something, and that can lead to something or whatever, right? It also helps you set your center line sometimes. These circumference lines and stuff, whether they're on a perfect sphere or whether they're on kind of this half egg or something like that, you want to get really comfortable in being able to do that, right? To just find, okay, where's the form of this? How can I get that form shaping and stuff, right? Anything else on this plane? You know what? Every plane has flaps. So if you're going to take flight, do flaps factor in, right? Even with jet propulsion, you want to have some flaps on it, right? For steering, that's the whole point. Otherwise, you're just a rocket blasting wherever that rocket's going, right? Helicopters, I think sometimes having a big set of blades like this could be kind of cool. Could also be a weapon. It could be on, here's somebody's forearm or something, and then on the side of it is like these blades that come out and stuff like that, right? Like, I don't know, like imagine that whirling around. It could be a cool weapon of sorts. It's also too large sometimes. What I like about this, though, is not only do you have the rotor blades, but you have an air intake here, an exhaust here, and look at the shape of this thing. It looks almost like a sci-fi one, right? Like it's basically this with a weird kind of Dr. Seuss exit point or something, right? And it obviously comes in a more solid form and then leads into this, right? There we go. And so there's two things. You've got a square design, you've got a nice curvature and stuff, and you can sometimes alternate that. If you don't want to have the blades exposed, look at how they contain them in this back end. I think that would be pretty cool. Another thing that I really wanted to show was cockpits. So we've talked about like the jet one, where it's just kind of like, contained and stuff like that. And so if we're drawing a mech, I'm just going to draw simple boxes here. Just for now. 2 simple boxes. One mech, might have the cockpit somewhere here, right, in the front, and it's just kind of leading towards whatever it is, right? Like kind of this jet thing that's very low profile, right? It just barely sticks up above the mech, and we can have shoulders or whatever it is, and the head's barely there. What does this feel like? Sleek, right? So I don't, it probably wouldn't be in that type of design. It'd probably be in something that's a speed type of thing. Like when we were drawing like a mech cat or something like that, there might be, that's how you can design a cockpit in that. The other one though is like how this is designed, this chopper. You can have it coming forward, right? And then come into a bit of a nose and then use that and throw the, you can even, like how this one has a bit of a guard in the front and then that. And then you could throw the seats, the pilot seats in there. And then, shoulders can come off of there or something like that. So looking at cockpit design for these type of mechs, I don't know. I think this is pretty cool. Okay, we're moving on. Cars. Yeah, mine isn't as cool, but mine can go off road. This one cannot. What's cool about this? Well, I'm going to show you. I've got both cars here, and there's some cool things about it. One would be the bevel and the sleek design, right? So, like, let's say I'm going to draw this, and I'm drawing my mech, and I love how all my mechs are going to start like with a symbol box, and this is the reason why. What is this? What's going on here? Do you know what I mean? Like, I can have this sweeping front end, right? And then it can come up to a ridge, and so this sweeping front end comes up to a ridge, and then it profiles down or something, right? And so now, and remember my sleek cockpit that I had earlier, we were just talking about it. Well, now, this, what's going on here? Is this now what the mech looks like, that it's got a body down here, right? And it's got speed to it. I don't know. That kind of thing. Like this sleek front end is my takeaway from this car, is how beautifully designed these curves are, right? So not just that, but now you can look at, okay, well, it comes around and curves in. So it comes around and curves back in. It comes around and curves back in, or even comes around and curves a secondary down into here, right? And then we've got a little hookup that comes on this side, right? And then there's actually a bevel that comes to the center point here and comes up. There's so many design features you could take away from this. So many, like even these small little, the trunk and trim lines and stuff like that, these small little bevel lines that run through the design, right? That you can have these as they slowly curve through and cut through the design, right? That's my takeaway from this, is how sleek it is. For this one, this is sleek, but it's got a badass factor, right? Look at all this air intake. So if I was to do the same thing, I've got my front end, right? Or my MECHS thing. Well, freak, I'm going to carry it forward like this. And then look at this design, like boom, boom. I could come out like that, come in, come up. And this is all, a grate. And this is coming in. And this is my air intake for the front, right? And it's just, how cool is this? You got to maybe use a little bit of perspective there if you're looking down on some of this, right? And that's like, and then behind it could be like this cool mesh grate that you overlay in behind it or something like that, right? And so you can have all these lines coming through, support lines for the grates there and stuff. You can have more mesh in through here. Like there's just so many cool designs when it comes to this, right? And then have this carry over, right? Just like the car thing, right? And then so that wraps around the shoulder unit that then comes down into the arm or something, right? And then the robot's head is up here somewhere, something like that, right? Okay, so with all of these, you can take them for what they are. You could just say, hey, you know what? I love tanks. I'm going to draw a tank that basically has something extra to it. And that's cool. You know what I mean? Like Tank Plus, Tank 100 years from now or something like that. That's cool. So you can do this and add on to it. But I think the reason why I focused on what I did was, yeah, you could take that tank and just add on to it. But I want you to look at the tank and say, what's cool about this and what can I take away and put on my designs? What features is it? Is it the bolt system? Is it the coverings? Is it the rotors? Like, is it the wheels? I love those wheels. You know what I mean? What is it? Is it the exhaust? How the exhaust is angled? And just these small little things that all of these designers have made these choices over the last couple 100 years or whatever. 100 years? Let's go with more like 100 years for these type of mechanical designs that will ease your burden, or at least will help you bridge into the next step. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, guys. It's already right here. Take it. Take what's been designed, take it apart, deconstruct it, reconstruct it, and make it your own. I hope this, was helpful for you because I freaking loved it. Like I love this stuff. And I know it's kind of like, yeah, I've seen these before, but now you're looking at all of these different machines in a different light, right? And I think that's really important. Look at them in a different way, and then when you start to build your mechs, you'll be like, got it. I know what I want to put there. And now you got it.